So, hey, welcome everyone to this event. My name is Carroll Bernard, and I'd like to thank the CREDC and Washington PTAC for inviting me to facilitate and moderate the session that we have today. We've got an all-star lineup for you, and I'm really excited about the presenters that you're going to hear from in just a few minutes. To give you a little bit of an introduction on my background, so I got my start in the acquisition community back as a supply officer in the U.S. Navy. When I got out of the Navy, I actually moved to Washington State and lived there in Vancouver, Washington for a while. And while I was there, I actually worked in procurement at the city of Vancouver, Washington. I worked at the Small Business Administration over in Portland. I worked as a contracting officer at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And my last job, I actually worked as an Apex Accelerator counselor for 4 years. And then I saw that there was a big need for education and accessible education to be online on demand 24/7 for busy business owners out there. So we launched Govology, and it's been a great ride ever since. And we're now a partner with the Washington Apex Accelerator. So if you guys want access to some really great training, including some of the folks that you're going to hear from tonight, just reach out to the Apex Accelerator. They'll give you a code, and then you can get access to that training at no additional cost to you. So thank you guys for your partnership. And again, thank you for having us here tonight. So our goal here for you is to do a couple of things to help you understand how you can do some things for capacity building. So helping you get funding and finance and other things that you need to be able to do projects, more projects and larger projects. So that's going to be one of the goals. Also, of course, the elephant in the room is the big I-5 bridge replacement project, which has been in the works since I've actually been at the city of Vancouver many years ago. So it's kind of cool to see that it's maybe finally going to happen now. And I know there's a lot of excitement about what that's going to look like coming down the pipeline here, when the bid packages are going to be rolling out. And so there's still a lot to be determined about that. We will give you a link to the website for that I-5 bridge replacement project. What we encourage you to do is go and follow them and subscribe to their newsletter and any of their social media channels so you can stay current on what's going to be rolling out. Again, they haven't given us a lot of information to go off of here to relate to you, but what we want to do is to be able to help you be able to build capacity and also build relationships, because you can never start too soon on those two things to be ready for what is ahead. So with that, we're going to go ahead. I wanted to do a brief introduction to our presenters for tonight. We're going to have 3 presentations, all about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll take a short break in between so you can ask a couple of questions to each of the presenters that we have. And then once we get through with all 3 of the presenters, what we're going to do is we're going to have an open forum Q&A where everybody will pitch in on answering questions for you guys. If you happen to have any questions for me about anything with related to my background at the city or working at the VA, I'd be happy to share with you. So let's go ahead and introduce our presenters for the night. And first, we're going to hear from Brooke Leslie. She is with the Washington State Department of Transportation, and she's going to talk to you about WSDOT's capacity building mentorship, capacity building mentor protege program. The next person we're going to hear from is Mr. Brad Reaves, who is actually, we're just bringing on Brad now. I recently met Brad, so he's also going to be coming on to do more presentations with us at Govology. But he's going to be talking about how small businesses can leverage joint ventures to win and perform non-federal public contracts. And I know he can also talk about how that relates to the federal side. And I really want you guys to take note when he talks about these teaming relationships and joint ventures, because this is one way that really, when you talk about capacity building, you can really level up astronomically. In fact, one of our most successful students at Govology came through and did some teaming training with us as a small disadvantaged business, is now winning multi-billion-dollar contracts through a joint venture partnership that he has. And so if you guys can forge those relationships and partnerships, it's really amazing what you can accomplish through those vehicles. So we're going to learn from Brad about those, because we talk a lot about federal programs, and this is done a lot on the federal side because of the unique nature of set-asides on federal contracts. But Brad's going to talk also tonight about some of the things that he's done and experiences that he's had actually working in non-federal realm within those contracts. So we look forward to that presentation. And last but not least, a fan favorite at Govology, and he's been with us for years, is Mr. Joshua Frank. Joshua is the founder and partner over at RSM Federal Contracting, executive coach, trainer extraordinaire. I like to let each of our presenters also do a little bit more of an introduction about who they are and what they do. So let's go ahead and get it kicked off, and we'll introduce our first presenter. And Brooke, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke. Last name is Leslie, often gets confused. I used to have a real last name before I got married. And I work for the Washington State Department of Transportation, and I work in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. And I also work alongside Michael Carpenter, which is in attendance today. He is my boss. And so when we get to the question part of this, I might have Michael jump in and kind of help me with some of the questions because I've only been in this role for a little over a year. And so, yes, I work as the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Support Services Coordinator, which it's DBE, which you've probably heard that acronym. Did somebody have a question? Sorry, I heard somebody say something. Nope, we're good. Anyways, okay. So yes, so what I'm going to talk about today is the Capacity Building Mentorship Program. And what I have shared on the screen is the WSDOT, Washington State Department of Transportation. The acronyms, I know, I don't want to get anybody confused. I've shared the link to the website, and I've also shared that with Julia, but I'm not able to share it in the chat because I don't have the permissions. So Julia is going to share that out. And then also Julia is going to be including a like a one-pager of just the program itself. And so you could have the one pager to provide at events or to send to constituents or whoever you'd like. And so to kick it off, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, we work to create equality in WSDOT's external programs, services, and activities. So the Office of Equity and Civil Rights is responsible for numerous programs, from assisting underrepresented individuals in gaining family wage jobs to ensuring non-discrimination in the award and administration of our construction program. And we also work to implement many aspects of WSDOT's inclusion goals within the strategic plan. So if you look at this website, you'll be able to see the it's called State Funded Contracts Diversity Roadmap, and there's a link to that, so you could look at that if you'd like. And so more so on the Capacity Building Mentorship Program works to grow the relationship with minority, small, veteran, and women business enterprises. So all the contractors and subcontractors working on WSDOT's consulting and construction projects are eligible to participate. And so what this program does is it pairs mentors, prime contractors, or consultants with protege firms that are certified by the Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises. Their acronym is OMWBE, which you might have seen. And so, or those that are registered with the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services as a smaller veteran business. And so the mentors provide technical assistance and business advice to strengthen the protege's capacity to perform work on WSDOT and Sound Transit projects. So this program enhances the capabilities and the participation of underserved businesses that can work on transportation related projects. So the capacity building mentorship program, it continues to grow every year by way of funding and by way of participation. So we've had over 170 mentors and proteges paired since 2018. And I want to share this, it's just some numbers. So responses, we do a survey every year. And responses from the July 2023 survey for the cohorts 4 and 5. So there's cohorts. So in 2018, it was cohort 1, 2, 3. Now we're in cohort 6. So cohort 4 and 5, they indicated that all responding mentors answered that helping a protege was worthwhile and valuable to their business. And nearly 75% of responding proteges answered that the capacity building mentorship program was worthwhile for them as well. And the overall satisfaction rates were 86%, with responding proteges affirming that their mentors helped them participate in new contracts with WSDOT, Sound Transit, and other private sector contracts. And so that's the long and short of my presentation. And are there any questions?
Right. So anybody have any questions for Brooke while we have her here? And by the way,
I just want to, I'm sorry. My name is Debbie Wilson and I'm the owner. I'm trying to open this. Okay, I'm the owner of Fresh Family LLC.
Oh,
and
yes, clearly. I know very much about you. Yes.
I just want to tell the people who's here now to talk to you guys here, Govology, Leslie from Washington,
Brooke, the first name. Sorry.
Lisa. These guys are extraordinary to your business. When I started with Apex, and at that time it was called something else, but we're just gonna say Apex, PTAC then, but we don't want to bring it up because it's Apex. We got to remember that. So I just want to say how extraordinary they were and where I'm at. And I mean, watching the videos from Mr. Bernard's Govology, from Lisa and her team at Apex, which was PTEX at the time, PTEC at the time, what they did, and then Lisa, and then as well, Leslie always calling and sending me the stuff. When I started talking to these guys, I had no contracts. I have 5 not government, but local government contracts right now. City of Seattle, City of Renton, 3 at UW. I went to the classes. I listened to the thing. I do everything. I go out. You have to listen to what these people are telling you because they're going to make you go to the next step. My next step now is with Julie because I want to get into government contracting. I want to tell you with the regular contracting is yearly or 2 years or 3 years. I have a 4-year and a 5-year is the most. But if you go to government contracting, I heard it can go longer. So I want to secure what I've done. I want to tell you this too. I'm gonna jump out of this after this. I have 5 employees that are under 40 years old that have purchased their first homes. So this is an extraordinary program. The way they have put this together, WSDOT, Apex, and the Govology. I'm getting a cold chill. I'm going to stop right there, but I'm telling you guys, you are all in the right place right now if you want to grow your business. And I'm here to grow to federal now. I just want to say that my name is Debbie Wilson. I'm not going to talk no more tonight. I just want you guys to know that this is real. It's not just one of those meetings. This is a real meeting right here. Okay. I am going off.
Right on,
I
Debbie.
do want to say, Debbie, that it has been a pleasure. I know you've worked with some folks at WSDOT already, and
Yeah.
we are very grateful for your participation. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
If I can ask a question here really quick, a lot of this information is new for individuals like myself. It kind of, I feel like a little bit of a Bambi in the headlights sometimes. And so I presume that there's going to be some kind of a follow-up dialogue to this meeting, maybe a distribution of contacts with key players and stuff like that, or are we kind of on our own to take notes for this type of stuff?
Hey Todd, Julia here, Apex Accelerator. Depending on where you're located, if you are registered with Apex, we can work with you one-on-one as a follow-up to this and continue working with you on navigating your entire process of government contracting. So to answer that, I will send you my email and then I'll help you get started.
Yeah, I have sorry, I just had surgery, so I'm a little out of sorts, but I do have an Apex contact in the local Vancouver area. So,
You're not alone, Todd.
Happy to help. I'll
I'm
follow
following
up with
with you as well. You got it.
thank you very much.
Yep.
And Todd, I don't know if you came in later, but this is being recorded as well. And Julia will be sending out the information from this as well.
Okay, yeah, it's I've got Julia K. Or is that Julia? Okay, so we
Yeah.
actually met towards the beginning of March. So I'll just follow up with her. Sorry, it's been a little bit.
Don't say
Yeah.
so.
No worries, we got you covered, Todd. It looks like someone else, Dan Haynes has raised their hand. Go ahead, Dan, open up your mic and ask your question.
Good afternoon. Thanks for doing this. My question has to do with the mentorship program. Does that also is that also open to those that want to be vendor suppliers, not necessarily contractors, performers?
Okay, so Michael, my boss, is on this. And so I might ask Michael to jump in. And yes, he's unmuted. So please, Michael.
Thanks, Brooke. The challenge with, I mean, it would be open to you as a firm. The challenge would be finding a mentor that would line up with your business model. So you're more than welcome to reach out and we'd see if we could find, or if you have someone you'd like to have as a mentor, we can do that also.
I don't have someone in particular to reach out to. It would be supplying a penetrating concrete sealant specifically.
Again, that would be something we can talk offline about, but we can see if we can find someone who has some experience in marketing in that as close as we can. I mean, that's kind of the catch is
Sure.
Ideally we want you to connect with someone who knows your business.
All right. Makes sense. Thank you very much.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
and Dan, I've also shared the link with Julia. In addition to the WSDOT link, I've shared the capacity building mentorship application situation. It's so then you can reply or apply, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, and I have that noted. Thanks for that.
Thank you for your question. Anyone else?
And we're going to have another opportunity to ask questions at the end of the forum. So if you guys have anything else that crops up, we could ask them at the end as well. So if you guys don't have any other questions at this time, I don't see any other hands up. We will move to Brad. But before we bring on Brad, I just wanted to say one more thing about this whole event and why we're here. Again, helping you to get the understanding of building capacity, building relationships. And when you're looking at the I-5 bridge replacement project, that is a big, nice project, but you're going to be able to apply some of these things to a lot of different types of public works projects, both federal and non-federal. So we do have, with our experts that we do have a lot of federal expertise on the federal contracting side, as well as the non-federal contracting side. So this is a great forum to ask anything you want. And I want to say this, that, no, I'm sorry. Let me cancel this. Can you guys still hear me okay? All right. I just got a notification that it said I was speaking Arabic on my Zoom. So I was hoping not, that wasn't the case. But one of the things I wanted to tell you guys about why I'm really excited about what's happening right now is you guys got a huge project going on in your backyard. But in addition to that, you might have heard the news about the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that was passed a couple of years ago. And this is so exciting. I really think that everybody who has capacity and is qualified will gonna get a lot of work from this. I saw a similar bill. It was only $80 billion passed back when I was in contracting at the VA back in like 2009, 2010 timeframe. And we were awarding so many contracts to to contractors that they basically were like, time out, I can't take no more contracts. So it was like literally the people who were involved with the government contracting at the time, they had the best years of their lives. And unfortunately, it was also in a recessionary period where a lot of people were going out of business, and to just see the stark contrast. And so this is why I really want to encourage each of you guys, if you've started working with the Washington Apex Accelerator and others, there's a real reason why you want to be involved in this marketplace. Not only is it a really great opportunity for you to grow, but it's also a really great opportunity for you to also diversify your business in a market that's stable in times of a bad economy. And there is always that economy that's coming. We don't know when the next time it will be, but you can't just switch on the contracts all of a sudden. So anyway, so with that, we're going to move to our next presenter. So Brad, we'll bring you up here and talk to us about joint ventures and teaming on non-federal public works projects, but also if you want to mix in some of the federal side of the stuff and show folks how they kind of compare and contrast, I think that would be really great.
Thanks so much, Carroll. Really appreciate the opportunity, to speak to everyone tonight. And I do think, while I am going to try to focus on state procurements, it is helpful to understand maybe some of the differences with federal. And I know we have some people maybe that are trying to get into federal or have a federal government contracting side in terms of their customers. So I will talk about that. Let me click through. I do have a good amount of information. So everybody, just to reiterate for the people who weren't there earlier, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides. You'll get everything because there's a good amount of information. I've just got a little information on about me here, but the main takeaway is I'm a government contracts attorney, and I've been doing this for a couple of decades. And I really deal a lot with focus on the small business, disadvantaged businesses, the set-aside programs at the federal level, at the state level. And in particular, especially since the federal expansion of joint ventures in 2016 and the federal mentor protege program. So over about the past 8 years, I've just done a ton of work in joint venturing, a lot with teaming. We're going to talk about the difference between a typical prime sub relationship in terms of a teaming agreement versus a joint venture agreement. That's what we're going to focus on a little bit more, because most folks are not as aware of joint ventures and the utility of that tool. But especially in that past 8 years, I've created hundreds of these joint ventures. And just as Carroll said, one of their Govology students essentially graduates, the most, I can take my most successful clients are folks who have learned how to leverage these joint ventures to be able to increase capacity and to bid on larger and larger and larger contracts. It just works so well for them to be able to do that. And we're going to talk about why. So let me get going. And I apologize. I'm the lawyer on the panel, so I just have to do a quick disclaimer, which is just that this is not legal advice. It's educational. It's up to date. It's all those things. But if you need legal advice in a given situation, please reach out to a government contracts attorney. Okay, so just a quick refresher on joint ventures. And again, I'm going to compare and contrast joint venturing with traditional prime sub teaming. Now, at the federal level, these are defined. Contractor teaming arrangements are defined. Essentially, here are the two different ways you can team up or pair up with another contractor, in some cases more than one contractor, to perform on a contract. And it works the same at the state level. You know, there are different ways that you can team up. In the most typical way of teaming up, you would team up where one contractor is the prime and the other is the sub. And you typically would enter into what's called a teaming agreement before you do that. A teaming agreement says, okay, if the prime is going to get awarded a contract, then they're going to award a certain amount of that work to their subcontractor. Most folks are familiar with that. Some of you are just getting started. Maybe you're just figuring that out, but most folks understand the prime sub relationship. Well, when we're talking about joint venturing is just another way of combining companies together to be able to bid on projects. Now, unlike the federal contracting arena, where there are very strict regulations that govern across all federal agencies in terms of how you create joint ventures, how you set them up, what requirements have to be in the agreements. When you start talking about state and local procurements, there are different requirements state to state. Now, some of those may mirror the federal requirements, but you have to look specifically. So one of the things I'm going to get to a little bit later in the slides here is some Washington specific regulations that deal with creating joint ventures and what you have to do to become a pre-qualified bidder as a joint venture, because it's not exactly what you would do in a prime sub situation. So again, at a very high level here, you have teaming agreement, traditional prime sub on one side, and then joint venture agreement on the other. These are ways of combining businesses together. In a teaming agreement, traditional prime sub, only one contractor has a direct contractual connection with the government, and that would be the prime contractor. In other words, the subcontractor has no contract. The legal word for that is privity. They have no direct connection with the government. So there's no enforcement rights between the government and the subcontractor. Now, on the other hand, as a joint venture, you might almost think about the two different companies that are coming together to joint venture to perform this contract as being both prime contractors. So they both have a contractual connection with the government. So you can also think about it like this. The government is getting two prime contractors instead of one. So you can see how that might make the government feel a bit more secure. And in fact, when you're looking, I'm not going to get this detailed into the Washington specific regulations, but there is some language there that says that one of the things they're going to look at in your joint venture agreement is to make sure that both of the parties are jointly liable. I'm sorry? Sorry, we might have just had an open mic. Anyway, one of the things that's in the regulations is it says that both the parties have to be jointly and severally liable. So what they're looking for is that if something happens to one of the parties, the other party is going to be able to continue on and finish the contract, right? Whereas if you have a prime sub relationship, if something happens to the prime, the contract's going to get terminated, and in some instances be terminated for default. So again, the joint venture setup, we'll talk about the benefits to the actual contractors, to you folks who are on the call, but there are actually quite a lot of benefits to the government too in terms of giving them more security. So, well, what is a joint venture? A joint venture is a new entity. It's a separate entity. Now, it can be incorporated or unincorporated. In other words, you can create a new business, and those are almost always created as LLCs, as limited liability companies, but it is a new business entity. And that business entity is actually going to be the entity that would bid on the contract if you're talking about a prime contract. But you could also, for purposes of, let's say, DBE goals, DBE requirements, you could also use a joint venture to fulfill subcontracting goals or to fulfill DBE goals. The DBE regulations at 49 CFR 26 deal with joint ventures as well. So you can almost think of each contractor, each joint venture member as being almost like a super subcontractor to the joint venture entity. Now, joint ventures can be populated or unpopulated. That just means they might have their own employees, they might not. At the federal level, for the most part, none of them have employees. So what does that mean? That just means, yes, you're creating a new company or a new entity, but it doesn't necessarily have to have its own employees. Instead, the joint venture is made up of the employees of each of the joint venture members. So as I mentioned, typically, especially at the federal level, but at the state level as well, the joint venture will be set up as a new entity, as a new LLC, but you can create a joint venture as what many people refer to as an agreement joint venture, right? As just a written agreement between the parties, but you haven't gone out and created a new business entity. You don't have to file a separate tax return. You don't have to go get a separate business license. It's created as an agreement joint venture. And it appears, from what I see in the Washington statutes, that you could do this in either way. And you probably need to, talk to an attorney to determine for a given procurement which is the best way to set it up. But what the joint venture does is it allows both parties to bring their expertise, their capabilities, their resources, their past performance and experience, and in a way that's different than a traditional prime sub, because typically they're your customer, the government, they're going to acknowledge all of the resources that both parties have. Whereas sometimes in a prime sub relationship, they're really focused on what the prime can do, as opposed to what both parties can do. So let me walk through just a couple of more slides here, and then happy to answer some questions. Let me walk through some of the benefits and then some of the Washington specific regulations. So one of the benefits of a joint venture is that unlike a traditional prime sub teaming agreement where you would enter into it and just go after one project, a joint venture can be put in place and then you can go after multiple projects with it. And instead of in a teaming relationship where as a subcontractor, you might be worried, okay, well, what if the prime contractor gets their award and then they decide not to give me my subcontract after? Well, with a joint venture, you already have that agreement in place. And so those issues don't occur as much with a joint venture as they do in prime sub. As I mentioned, there's a governmental benefit here where they can feel more secure that they've got two prime contractors for the price of one. And one thing to look at here, this is available at the federal level. And if your specific state follows the federal rules of allocation or affiliation for size purposes, sometimes joint ventures can help you reduce your revenue flow for size purposes. That will help keep you smaller for longer, which is a good thing. And then something that Carroll mentioned earlier that I want to mention is that for construction contracts in particular, I will tell you this, that the joint venture clients that I have that have been the most successful and we've had many successful joint ventures in many other industries, but the construction industry, one of the reasons why joint ventures are so successful is because of the need for bonding and the need and the assistance that it provides when you have somebody else who is jointly and severably liable. When I say somebody else, I mean another company who can share and allocate the bonding risk. Basically, you're sharing the risk. You may have different surety programs, but the surety programs can work together and can allow you to bid on and to bond larger projects. And that's, those of you who are in the industry, you understand that having the right amount of working capital and then having a supportable bonding program, that is key to being able to bid on larger and larger projects. Now, there are a lot of benefits. There are some, I say drawbacks, but maybe let's just say some additional costs and administrative issues that you have to deal with. You sometimes have to pay people like me, right? There's the legal fees to set these things up, the joint venture agreements, the operating agreements, the formation of a new entity if you're going to set it up that way, a new business license, some additional tax filings. So there are some things that you have to deal with a joint venture. So, the quick and easy way is just enter into a prime sub relationship. And that's why a lot of people team in that way, because you enter into the teaming agreement and then you enter into it. But then all of those other things I talked about, all those attributes, you miss out on those with the joint venture. So there are definitely considerations depending on the project that you're looking at. These are some of the specific points that I wanted to get to, before we get to questions about the Washington Administrative Code dealing with submission of a bid as a joint venture. So you don't want to just create a joint venture and then assume that on bid day, you're going to be able to bid as a joint venture without doing any other work. The code recognizes two different types of joint ventures in Washington. And I'll tell you, this is different than the federal. This is very different than how it looks federally. All joint ventures are viewed the same. In the state of Washington, they're viewed in two different ways. Number one, Is it just an individual project joint venture? In other words, are you all coming together just for this project and you don't plan to use this joint venture, either the entity or that agreement-based joint venture, on any other project? Or number two, is it a continuing joint venture, which is how the federal program is set up? Have you all come together and you've said, all right, we're going to go after multiple opportunities, whether they're prime opportunities or whether they're subcontracting opportunities? Well, the regulations provide that each of those joint ventures needs to be pre-qualified. There's a process to go through. I've got a link on the screen to the form 410-009. That is a WSDOT form that you have to submit. Here's just a little bit more information here. If it is an individual project joint venture, you've got to submit that form within 15 days before submitting your bid, at least 15 days before submitting your bid. Now, I will tell you this, under these regulations, if it's a continuing joint venture, in other words, one that you're going to use for multiple projects, there are more requirements and regulations for those projects or for those particular joint ventures. They're not crazy or anything, but they want to see your joint venture agreement. That's one of the requirements. They want to make sure that you all have the right authorization from each company, that both companies are bound to this joint venture. Both companies are going to support this joint venture. So those, I wanted to make sure everybody understood there's a little nuance here under Washington law, that there are these two different kinds, and each would need to go through that process, although it's an easier process if it's just using it for the one time, because it's basically, as long as both companies are already pre-qualified to bid, the joint venture is going to be pre-qualified without providing significant additional information. Whereas for the continuing joint venture, it's going to be more information. One last thing I want to touch on before we move, just a couple of other issues. Size and status is always important with joint ventures. So at the federal level, again, there's a very robust set of small business regulations that deal with, okay, when can a large business JV with a small business? Okay, two different small businesses, how can they joint venture together and what are the rules? I will tell you that under the DBE regulations do not call out that there's any issues with a DBE joint venturing with a large business or a small business. But here's the important point. If the DBE is going to joint venture with another business and go and perform a contract, that prime contractor that is going to contract with that joint venture is only going to get the DBE credit for the specific portion of work that's actually performed by the DBE. So in other words, that joint venture partner may help you as a DBE, as a disadvantaged business enterprise, win the award or get the subcontract, but just remember, they're only going to get, they can help your capacity, but they're only going to get the credit for the DBE participation for the percentage of work that you perform. And they want that percentage to be in accordance with the ownership percentage. So that's something that you'd have to look at very carefully, project to project, to make sure you're performing the right amount of work. I'll mention this, JVs can create some insurance issues, but usually those can be ironed out if you have a good insurance broker. Typically what will just happen is that the joint venture will be added as an additional insured. And I've already mentioned the issue of bonding. Even with different bonding programs, the bonding can be very important, as we've mentioned, for these projects. And that's something, usually there's something like a cross indemnification or some sort of indemnification agreement that gets entered into between the two parties, so that you can, again, both try to bolster, speaking of capacity building, bolster your capacity to be able to bid on larger projects. So I know that's an absolute fire hose of information, real quick on joint venturing and a little bit about teaming, but happy to answer questions now, and then also obviously sticking around towards the end, like Carroll said, so that we can answer other questions.
All righty. Thank you, Brad. Anybody have any questions for Brad? And while we're waiting for questions, I do have just a couple of tips that I had written down here. So one thing, when you're working to build these JVs, of course, typically you're going to not go straight for the kill, and we call it kind of dating before you get married. So a lot of times some of the bigger firms that you're maybe want to propose a JV with, want to work with you on a couple of projects before they get married to you, because literally you're creating a new baby in that joint venture entity that you're going to create out there. The other thing I noticed on the federal contracting side is that, you know, don't rule out considering JVing with other small businesses or even medium-sized businesses that can help you out there. Sometimes it's actually easier to get those JV deals done with smaller to medium sized firms than the huge big ones out there. So do we have any questions on for Brad? And again, we're going to come back towards this at the end, but this has been very interesting because I know a lot on the federal side, but not so much on the state side. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Todd.
There you go. You can see it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. First, thanks for all the information. So how do I start? One of the things, like for me, we're an engineering consultant, and on the mechanical, HVAC, plumbing, process type industries. We don't do electrical yet. We're looking to step into that. We're also a very small organization, DVE certified, and we're looking at moving into this. Now, when you present your two options as either a prime sub or a like a joint venture type, I've had opportunities to do prime sub with some projects, and I've never proceeded with them because they was like, what happened is they said, okay, well, our project budget is this many millions of dollars, our 10% target, so we want you to commit to, $500,000. And I'm like, well, what am I doing for that 500,000? Well, we don't know yet, right? So I passed because I'm not going to sign up for it and then be liable for 90% of the engineering and design work on mechanical and process without knowing what my scope is. How do you protect on that type of a scenario? I think it sounds like the only way is a JV, but then how do you build a relationship with a JV that you've never worked with? It's kind of a double-edged axe.
Yeah, Todd, great question. Let me talk about the first part there too, because I think Carol's right. You sort of have to walk before you run in terms of building a relationship, with the potential JV partner. And so if you are going to enter into that teaming arrangement and then a prime sub relationship, I think you did the exact right thing. I mean, to commit to some dollar amount when it's not clear what scope of work you're going to be performing is just a nightmare scenario from a legal standpoint. So the way that you deal with this on the teaming side is you would never sign a teaming agreement that just has a TBD, like a to be determined or to be allocated or to be. You need to have a clear scope of work, a clear pricing, clear. The parties need to know and need to have crystal clear exactly what the subcontractor is going to do if the prime is awarded a contract. And again, this changes from state to state. Where I am in Virginia, courts construe these team agreements very strictly. And unless you have mandatory language that says you shall award a subcontract, the teaming agreements can be walked away from by the prime contractors. Whereas over on the West Coast, within the 9th Federal Circuit, the teaming agreements can be more enforceable even with lesser language, but the safest language to have would always be some mandatory language that says something like this, Todd, that says if the prime contractor is awarded a prime contract, it shall award or it must award a subcontract that contains work that is defined in Exhibit A or something like that. And then Exhibit A is going to have exactly what work you're going to do and exactly how much you're going to get paid for that work. So that's how you set it up in a prime sub. But yes, in a joint venture, because you're splitting work and splitting profits, that's the way to sort of guarantee that, a rising tide lifts all boats. If you're either successful together or you fail together. But you do have to get there. And so I understand Carol made a good point on that.
Yeah. And we have another hand up. I can't see your name, but DBE MBE Strategic Privacy Alliance. Garrison.
Yes, hi, my name is Garrison. I'm with Strategic Privacy Alliance. Strategic Privacy Partners Inc. registered with SAM.gov. So my question is, We are an IT, hardware, software, cloud provider. We primarily specialize in networking security and equipment, routers, switches, et cetera, and service integrator, and do devices as a service as well. So we are registered with. We just recently found someone to partner with. We have the technology and the equipment and the services and the IT specialty. They have the experience with like laying fiber optic cables and infrastructure and services and support. So for the E-rate program for the FCC, we're going through that process to apply. We just got our FRN number, and we're already registered in the Washington State as Washington State vendors, in the EDDEs, et cetera. And as we go through the FCC registration process to get our Form 498 ID to be, that whole Arabic thing came up for me as well. To be able to partner with a company, they want to be affiliates with us. So they're going to do the infrastructure because they have all the equipment to be able to do the services. They're already doing work with the federal government in the state of Washington and the military. What's the difference between an affiliate and a JV partner and a teaming partner? And do we need to have some sort of agreement in place because we're putting our application in, we're affiliating ourselves with their number in our application? And I want to know what risks are involved in that and if we need to do anything additional to protect our interests and their interests.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm happy to talk with you offline a little bit about this because it might get too, but let me try to stay at like a 10,000 foot level, which is, there is a concept of affiliation in both federal and usually state government contracting as well, where if your ties to another business are too close, then their receipts are going to get added to your receipts and their employees are going to get added to your employees for size purposes. And then that could blow you up out of your size standard, right? So you do have to be careful about affiliation. And so one of the things about the joint venture program, and the reason why it is a relatively defined term. So you're coming together to bid on projects, but it's usually not you are creating a new baby, as Carroll said, but you're not creating it forever. Right? It's limited. And one of the reasons why you do limit it is so that you won't be found to be generally affiliated for all purposes. So you can maintain your small business status. So I think for your scenario, maybe under the FCC context, affiliating with them for that, 498, that may serve a certain purpose, but I would be careful even about marketing yourself as their affiliate or them marketing you as an affiliate if you're going to be seeking prime set aside work that's in that small business set aside, because that could put you in a position of being generally affiliated with them, which would blow you up depending on their size. I don't know anything about your size or their size other than I know that you're DBE, MBE, right? So that's what I would be careful about. And there's probably some other considerations too, but I'd be happy to connect with you offline to talk about those.
Okay, perfect. I sent your LinkedIn invite already.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I see your hand up, Michael. I want to
Thank
say
you.
one thing. Thank you. We'll get to Michael's question, but we do have some training on Govology. So if you talk to your Apex Accelerator folks, we have training on teaming, joint ventures, and something called the SBA's Mentor Protege Program, which allows for an exemption to the affiliation rules, but that's federal, not state. So Brad, I'd love to actually get you back on to do like a full presentation on some of the state ins and outs, because we really don't have a presentation on that. The other thing I was going to say is we're just going to give you some nuggets here to kind of get your mind thinking about the possibilities, but you do need to get a little bit more education for yourself so you could have these conversations with potential partners. But when that time is a go and there's a green light, please make sure you're working with somebody like Brad, because with all the experience I've got, I would definitely be hiring Brad, because I don't eat, sleep, and breathe like all of the regs, and they always change all the times, so you want to make sure that everything's 100% compliant. All the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, so that when you do get all that work done and you put your bid on that project, it's going to be a compliant bid that your competitors aren't going to basically be easily able to protest you and get you kicked out. So just my 2 cents. Let's go to Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Henderson at the Port Townsend Shipwrights Co-op there. We are a little shipyard. And a lot of the contracting work for federal and some of the state work requires a lot of proof of performance in order to be eligible. And I'm curious how that would work with a joint venture if, say, we don't have enough proof of performance. Are we allowed to venture with someone who does, or vice versa? Would someone who doesn't have enough experience be allowed to work with us?
Are you primarily doing federal work, Michael?
We've done a little bit of state. We're dipping our toes into both.
Okay.
Done a little bit of state. We've done a little bit of federal. We haven't done a whole lot of really either.
Okay. Well, let me tell. Here's the answer to that. At the federal level, there's a very clear answer, and it's a very helpful answer. Under 13 CFR 125.8E, I know about it because I've got a bid protest that's dealing with that section right now. The joint venture members, the two joint venture members, when a contracting officer is looking at a bid, they must consider the capabilities, the experience, the past performance, and the resources of both members to essentially be the experience of the JV, even if you just created the JV yesterday. And the SBA has created those regulations because they want to encourage the use of joint ventures, and they want to encourage small businesses to combine together, or like Carroll said, under the SBA's Mentor Protege program, to combine with their mentor and bid. So on federal work, yeah, it's a very clear answer that you can, even if you have maybe not no experience, but if you have some experience or less experience, if you can team up with somebody through a joint venture and bid, you can rely on their experience. Now, at the state level, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at the RFP or the IFB or whatever it is. You're going to have to look at it closely. You're going to look at it closely and see how are they measuring or evaluating past performance. And sometimes you're going to have to ask a question. When you're in that Q&A period, you're going to have to ask them to clarify as, you know, how are they going to treat joint venture partners? So that, for instance, maybe in a RFP or procurement where they're not going to consider subcontractor past performance, sometimes they will still consider both JV partners past performance. But the only way to know and to nail it down is to ask that question before it's time to submit bids and proposals.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Sure thing.
And so we'll get some more questions coming in at the end here. So to keep us on schedule, we'll move ahead. But one thing that I did want to, one more tip on these JV deals, make sure you guys are planning ahead. You don't want to just wait until the project is posted to kind of start the wheels rolling, because especially if you end up in a JV, you probably won't have time to do all of the work to get the legal entity set up and do the things that you need to do. So think about this from a long range planning perspective. So if you think that doing a JV is a strategy that you would like to use to help you in various elements to get your past performance or experience that you don't have, or maybe some of the bonding, this is what you can identify. But then once the JV is set up, and that might be a project specific that you identify, but once it's set up, then it's ready to go. And so if the other projects coming down the pipeline, it's already in the queue ready to go. So, all right. Thank you, Michael. Let's move on to Mr. Joshua Frank. And, you know, when I think about this project with the I-5 bridge replacement project, I think about huge bid packets that are going to be going out where a lot of small businesses may not be able to access those. So I thought this would be a great time to bring Josh on, because I think one of the things that you guys are going to want to do is try to build those relationships with potential companies that you think that would be vying for the project. And when I think about the local area around, Vancouver, Washington, I think about Kiewit, I think about Skanska, I think about some of those big contractors. So if you're not already in with them, I would suggest starting to build some relationships with them. So Josh is going to talk to you guys about how to convince a prime to put you on their team. So Josh, take it away.
It was sort of odd. I had to stop the share to get my audio on, Carroll. I apologize. Give me one sec here. Let's bring this up. Let's share. I want screen 2, share it. Come on. Lord, Lordy, Lordy. Almost there. All right. Now, Carol, Carol, can you hear my voice and see my slide?
Perfect.
Beautiful. How much time do I have, Carol?
Well, if you want to go for 15 to 20, I think that would give us enough time to close out with about 15 to 20 left for questions.
All right. So let me do this. I want to make sure I don't hijack here, and let's do stopwatch start. Okay. So first of all, it's being recorded, so I'm going to have to behave. And Carol, you warned me about that. I think Lisa did too. I want to thank Lisa, Julia over at the Washington Apex, definitely Brooke with DOT, Carol, Brad, always good to see you guys. What I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to give you a flavor for tactics and strategies. I've been in this market for 35 years. I'm an executive coach. You know, I work with all size businesses. But what I specialize in are tactics and strategies. Okay. Teaming is more than simply introductions and desire, right? You know, Brad did a great job of running down, you know, hey, from a joint venture perspective, you know, both companies, if you're in a JV, you both get prime past performance and all the other things that he talked through. What I want to point out is, okay, how do we get to where Brad was talking? How do we actually get into that relationship? How do we actually convince another company to go, yeah, I want to be on that team, right? Or I want a team, or I want a joint venture with this company. There are a couple of things that you need. You need to have market and opportunity intelligence, right? If all you do is you see an opportunity in the state of Washington, you go, yes, I want to go after that. And you immediately, and you know nothing else other than what you see in the news. And then you head off and you try to get into a joint venture. 9 times out of 10, you're not getting into that joint venture because the other company is going to look at you and go, you don't even have any intelligence or information on this opportunity. And so what I'm going to talk through in a very short 15, I may try to stretch it a little, is the tactics and strategies. You know, it's not about what you learn, right? If you get anything out of today, I want you to think differently. You know, the difference between a job and an occupation is lifelong learning. You all obviously believe that, or you wouldn't be here today. You also can't talk teaming in a vacuum. You can't talk prime subcontract, joint venture, mentor protege. You can't talk any of this in a vacuum because I can't talk to you about teaming without talking to you about sales and corporate operations and back office process. So those companies that are successful, right? State, local, federal, contracting, et cetera, are able to do something. They're able to bridge state, federal sales strategies with business strategies, right? And again, my goal is I want each of you to take away something from this, whether it's a tactic, strategy, et cetera. Your objective, this is like one of my big foot stomps. Your objective when you're talking to another company is not to convince them of how great you are, how awesome your services are, because guess what? There's another dozen, 100 companies in your area that do what you do. So what is the objective? And the objective is very simple, but it's a little complex. It is to convince the other company, whether it's a prime contractor or another, it's a company you want to go into a JV on. Your number one objective is to convince them that you'll make them more competitive. Okay. If you approach me, right, from a business perspective and go, hey, Josh, My name is, Julie, and I'm with, ABC Technology, ABC Construction, ABC Concrete, whatever it is. And, we're really good at what we do. And we've got, a half a dozen contracts. And, we want to be on your team. I'm going to look at you and go, that's nice. I already have my preferred subcontractors. I already have companies I've been working with for the last several years. Or I've received calls from other companies that said, hey, we've got some information that'll make the team more competitive. So no matter what other company you approach, your number one objective is to think to yourself, how will I make them and their team more competitive? Period. It's not semantics. It is a different way of thinking, but this is how they're deciding who to partner with and who to team with. And even my dogs agree with me. Hold on one sec. There must be a delivery. I will keep going. Hold on one sec. Hey!
We can't really hear the dogs, by the way, Josh.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because
Joshua, I feel you. This is Brooke. I know about the dogs. Yes.
hello, Brooke. I'm getting ready to start throwing things. Okay. Yeah, the problem is I can't think. Hold on. Hey. Yeah. All right. FYI, I did not hit the dog with my shoe. I threw it at the wall. Okay. So the teaming triangle. When I say to you, hey, one of the more important things you can be doing is convincing them you'll make them more competitive. When smaller companies approach other smalls or even larger firms, whether they're GCs or just system integrators on the technology side, what normally happens is you see an opportunity and you call a partner. And this is how that conversation goes. You go, hey, Mike, it's Josh with RSM Federal. We saw this opportunity. We'd like to be on your team. And Mike will go, well, Josh, that's great, but that's Sally. Sally's in a different office all the way across town. Let me get your contact information and I'll have her call you. Now, I will ask all of you, do I get that call? Do I ever get a call? No, of course I don't get a call because I'm one of several dozen companies, right, that do what I do. And Sally's never going to call me. And so every time you see an opportunity and you go, I'm going to call this other company up and try to team with them, whether it's prime, subcontract, or JV or what have you, instead of calling, the very first thing you do is call that state government, call federal government, and just simply ask questions, collect some information. And if you go, I'm a little shy, I'm not even sure what questions to ask, I would say one of the great questions to ask is why now? Now the I-5, that bridge project, everybody knows, but why now? You may hear, well, now we have money. It's a priority of the governor. It doesn't matter what questions you ask, and it doesn't matter what answers you get, because now I'm going to call another company. And when Mike says, well, that's Sally in a different office, let me get your contact info, I interrupt. And I go, hold on, Mike. We've been talking to the buyer and we've been collecting market intelligence. And what is the first question that Mike's going to ask me? That's right. Well, gee, Josh, what did you hear? And what is the number one mistake that small businesses make? They tell them and you lose all your leverage. And your answer is, you laugh and you go, I'd love to share that information with you. But like your company, we have a process where we don't share intelligence unless we're under a teaming agreement. So you can see how, what Brooke was talking about, what Brad was talking about, we're sort of bringing it all together. And what happens is Mike goes, you know what, Josh, you've been talking to somebody and you have intel. I'm going to get Sally on the phone. We're going to have a 3-way call right now. And that is the power of the teaming triangle. So Your number one objective is to convince the other company you will make them more competitive. It is not about what you sell. It is not about the products you sell. It is not about the services you provide. It's about how do you convince them you'll make them more competitive, and how do you do that? You never call the other company first. You always call the buyer and start collecting information. Now, companies are going to, I've got a race here based on time. I won't go too fast, but I'm going to move. When larger companies are looking at all of you and you approach them, right? It could be McCarthy Construction, you know, JB Dunn, whoever it is, or it could be technology, Lockheed Martin, whatever. They're evaluating you on 5 areas, and they're not going to tell you that they're evaluating you on 5 areas, but this is what they're doing. And the first one is, do you know the market? If you follow the teaming triangle and you're at least talking to somebody, you're not just looking at your computer, you're not just talking, to colleagues, you're actually talking to the end user, you can prove that you know the customer. Number 2, your back office maturity. Now, you solopreneurs, right? You solopreneurs, you emerging small businesses, you may think you have a problem with this. You don't. You can position correctly as long as you have strong interpersonal skills. You do what you say you're going to do, right? You're proactive. People are going to ask around, right? So, and if they don't find anything negative or positive, that's a good thing, actually. And do you have competitive pricing? But if you come across as a one-woman band or a one-man band, yeah, it's going to be a little hard to prove the back office maturity. And that is more important than what you do. Your back office maturity, these other companies, and most other companies, when they look at you, they're going to go, I know what they do. Obviously, I know what services they provide or products they sell, but I don't have a warm and fuzzy about their back office. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through today, well, gee, what are some things you can do? The one thing I'll tell you is if you're a solopreneur, pay 2 or 3 of your friends $1 a year to serve on your website. I kid you not. I need a chief of operations. Don't put anybody in a delivery role, but there are ways for you solopreneurs positioning in the market. Bottom line, your back office maturity. Just do what you say you're going to do. Respond back by phone. Don't call back the next day. Be hyper responsive. Number 3, now we're looking at what you sell. Number 4, quid pro quo. Do you do, if you want a larger company to put you on their team, you need to put them on one of your teams first. Bring them business first. And last but not least, acquisition differentiators. That is your MBE, your WBE, your SDVUSB, woman-owned small business, whether, 8A, at the federal level, whatever your socioeconomic statuses are. Let me be very clear on something. You are never going to win a contract because you are certified with the state or you are certified with the SBA on the federal side. Okay. You are not going to be awarded anything because of the color of your skin, your gender, your veteran status, or where you work in your city from a hub zone perspective. I will say it one more time and move on. You will not win because of your status. And for those of you going, I don't get it, because everybody else has said, we have to, spend money with these, women and minority and socially disadvantaged. I will simply say it to you this way. For all the women that are here today, I want you to imagine that you go after a contract that is WBE, okay, at the state level. It's a woman business and, it's WBE set aside. 17 companies submit bids. What is the only thing that all 17 companies have in common? That's right. They're all woman-owned. And at that point, your status, your certification means absolutely nothing as it moves through the source selection and they start looking at your bid and your pricing. Okay. So your statuses are important, but I want you to recognize it's at the bottom. Don't lead with your status. That just makes you sound like a small business, even though you are. I'm going to need to ask Carol to jump back in. Carol, can you hop in, please?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a couple more slides. How much time do I really have?
Yeah, just go ahead and get through them and
Okay.
yeah. You're so
Okay.
good.
So, you know, I've trained over 24,000 companies in my career, whether it's national conferences or webinars or whatever it may be. Okay. And small companies often say, you know, oh, I saw an opportunity for, you know, let's say it's for construction. And they're like, oh, we look at the solicitation and yeah, we do all of that. Let's bid. Now, the highest value of a contract that company has ever been awarded was $2.5 million. But this opportunity is for 30 million. Yet companies go, well, we can stretch. So I put together these levels to help you think from a business perspective when you should and shouldn't team with another company. And so number one, that's everybody. Oh, we've done that. Absolutely. We've got the past performance. We're going to bid. That's just level one. Level two, when you look at the labor categories, do you have past performance in all 100% of those labor cats? Often the answer is no. That would be a reason to bring on a subcontractor or another, or the prime would bring on another company as well. Number three, level of volume. That's that, you know, 2.5 million versus 30 million, right? Now, if you have contracts that, you know, in the, you know, 500,000, 1 million range, and this is for maybe a $5 million contract, sure, you can stretch. But if it was 30 or 40 or 50 million, don't think because you have, look, we are all successful as entrepreneurs because we don't quit and we never say never. But you're going to lose so many of those bids due to volume because you don't have the level of volume, even though you have 100% of the past performance. And the number four is, do you know the customer? Are you located where that contract's going to take place? So as you move down from 1 to 4, 4 is you are the maximum competitiveness. I want you to think about those pieces when you decide to team. Now, I'm going to finish today with, I say 12 plus because Carol, there's 13, and I just couldn't put the number 13 down. I'm not superstitious, but I decided to do 12 plus.
Dozen.
What's that?
Baker's dozen.
Baker's dozen.
Yeah.
No, all right. So 12 success factors. These are things I've learned over time and that I teach all my clients. And I want you to have them. Number one, you are an expert at whatever you decide to be an expert at. This has nothing to do with teaming, but as I told you at the onset, this is more than just teaming. This is business acumen. It is not just state or federal sales acumen, right? Or how do you team with a company? You are an expert, whatever you decide to be an expert at. So if your company doesn't do, does a certain thing, but not something else, and you realize, oh, we got to be able to do that too. I think it was, who was it? Somebody was talking in here. I think it was Michael Henderson. Hey, we've got a little here on the state and we have a little here on the federal. Look, you want to explode into any market, then you simply be the expert in that market. And it is as much a mental mindset as it is setting your strategy as a company. Hope is not a strategy, right? There's a lot of folks that, and some of you probably, where you go, oh, I want to do this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who I should be talking to. But I'm going to have to just wait for the solicitation to come out for the bridge, the bridge project. Well, guess what? You're hoping, okay? If you need help positioning before it actually gets released and you're not sure what to do, then that's when you get with Julie and Lisa, right? That's when you get with, I think it's Brooke, Brooke with DOT. Get some strategy help. Your marketing gets 6 seconds. This is always a fun one. When you are talking to another company and you go, hey, I'd like to schedule a call with you for this Friday, this Thursday, and you send them links to your website and you send them some marketing collateral or a CAPE statement if you're on the federal side, whatever, but you're marketing, nobody's going to look at that. Hold on. Hey, Lee. So marketing, nobody's going to look at your stuff for more than 6 seconds. I cannot overemphasize this. If I'm thinking of putting you on my team, we're all so busy. I am unlikely to go look at your website. I'll probably look at your LinkedIn profile, but I'm not going to look at your website. I'm not going to look at all your marketing material. I'm going to glance through it. I will spend 6 seconds. And if I see logos of commercial companies, if I see logos of federal agencies, of sports teams, whoever your past performance is, and those of you that have no past performance yet, you use your individual experience, but you say, the executive management of our company has worked with boom, 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 instead of saying the company. All right, we can get more into that later. General contractors don't team with companies. They team with people. You've got to build relationships and you have to convince them that you have market information that will make the team more competitive. Have I mentioned that? Make the team more competitive. Also, don't market what you sell. Now, some of you are looking at me going, what are you talking about? You don't market what you sell. You market the value that your products or services provide. This is critical to teaming with other companies. And disregard for a minute that we're talking the state market or the federal. 90% of what I'm discussing here today is market agnostic. This all applies on the commercial side, the residential side as well. So you need to market your value. And when I say value, as an example, instead of saying, oh, we provide IT services or, cyber intrusion detection and network engineering or general contractors, that do design build and what have you, and that's pretty much it. Instead, and this is really quick and fast. Hey, our company has supported more than a dozen contracts geographically dispersed across 4 states, supporting, 7 organizations with more than 1.3 million end users, quantifiable, qualifiable metrics. And those numbers I just gave, you could be a $1 million company. And those numbers apply. Okay. So market your value, not what you sell. Okay. Teaming is not a slot machine. If you've been teaming with a company, talking with a company for the last year, and you've been on 4 or 5 things together and you have never won anything, what's the definition of insanity? Right? Same thing, getting a different result. So you need to have a teaming stable. Write that down. Teaming stable. These are the 10 or 12 companies that over the next 12 months, you're going to call every month. You're going to build a relationship with. You're going to talk to them about opportunities. What you don't want to do is every time there's a new opportunity, you're looking for another company to team with. You want those relationships. You will be so much more likely to get on the team with them. They already know who you are. So build a teaming stable. I'm not going to go through this again. Your socioeconomic certifications, right? Minority, woman, veteran, whatever it is. It simply balances you in the market. It does not give you competitive advantage. I don't care what anybody else says. I have argued with folks from a business perspective. It opens doors, a little bit less competition, but you're not going to win because of it. You're going to win because of the value that your product services provide. This already came up once. You initiate, Carroll brought this up. This was an excellent point. You initiate your discussions with other companies pre-acquisition. That means before the solicitation hits the street. If you try to do it after the solicitation hits, you're likely to get a lot of no, we already have our team built. So make sure you're building your team, you're getting onto a team. If you're going to be a sub or if you're going to JV, do that pre-acquisition before the RFP or the RFQ is released. I already said, bring the first bring the first opportunity to them. Let me give you an example. For all of you that are small business, which is most of us, I want you to imagine that maybe it's the I-5. Carroll, is that right? Am I saying that right? The I-5 project?
Yes.
Okay. You know whose team you want to be on. Okay. If you don't, well, that's step one. But now you know whose team you want to be on. And you go, oh man, everybody's trying to get on that team. You know what? Find an opportunity this week that's got to be bid next week, and you call them up and you go, hey, I'd like, I'm going after this opportunity, and I'd like you to be a sub on my team, and I'll give you 10%. Even if I know I can do 100% of the work, I'm going to give them 10% and go, all I need is your corporate logo, an overview of your corporate history, your corporate write-up, and one past performance. Now, whether I win or lose that bid, that large company remembers me, because when the I-5 drops or another large project drops, they're going to go, oh yeah, Josh, hey, yeah, it was really too bad we didn't win that one opportunity. You brought us onto your team. Yeah, I know, Mike. Hey, Mike, though, but I'm calling about I-5. Oh yeah, you want to be on the team? Absolutely. I kid you not. That's how important it is to bring them something first, even if you don't win. All right, last slide. Your relationships drive teaming decisions. Okay, so you need to be face to face, folks. Don't rely on phone, don't rely on video technology. If you can get face to face with folks, do it. You're way more likely to get on the team. Remember this, and Brad did a really good job of referring to this as well. These other companies aren't winning over you because they necessarily have stronger past performance. Okay. They're winning because they're communicating stronger value, either stronger value with the other company whose team they got on, or stronger value with the state, local, commercial organization that awarded the contract. I cannot overemphasize. I don't want to know what you sell. I do. But I want to know the value that what you sell provides to your clients. And you're just another company. Don't differentiate with these other companies until they perceive you equal to your competition. Okay. And the way that we do that is by saying, hey, you know what? We're like everybody, and you all should do this. Hey, Dan Haynes, what do you do? What does your company do? And before you even respond, you state, you know what? You can look at our website or our marketing material. We got like, 10 various service lines like everybody else in the market, but we really excel in two. And here's what they are. And guess what? Dan tells me what those two are because he knows what I'm focused on. He knows which of them he is going to tailor for me. And then finally, exclusivity. Most teaming agreements, partnership agreements, whatever you want to call them, have exclusivity paragraphs. It is standard across most markets and industries. If you choose not to be exclusive and you somehow convince, 2 or 3 other companies to put you on their team, you are less likely to make money. And people will open their eyes and go, Josh, how is that possible? And the reason it happens is because if you're on my team and I've got 5 companies on my team and everybody signed exclusivity except for you, you are the only one that didn't share the risk. And so you'll be excited. You're like, yes, I got onto one of my 3 teams. And then 6 months later, you go, why am I not getting work? Well, you'll get work. Dan, you'll get work a little bit down the road, but these other team members are getting it first. And you're going to be mad and you won't understand why. So I have written quite a few books And the one on the left is the #1 all-time bestseller for small business government sales. It's federal, not state, but all the same principles apply, tactic strategies. And with that, and I apologize, Carol, I went, I think, 10 minutes over, but I really do appreciate you letting me finish up with those slides.
We'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today for our workshop. We look forward to seeing you and further workshops that we will have. You can check us out on WashingtonApex.org for any and all workshops upcoming, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody, and take care.
Bye.